One of the things that I've observed in you is you kind of thrive on problems.
So been dealing with a lot of banking customers and things like that. So somewhere along the line, it has to be you have to keep a cool head when everything is burning around you. You need to get it right, so you need to keep a level head there. Or the pressure is something which people define differently. Go home and get a good sleep.
I think one of the things that I've observed in you is you're very direct, right?
Right. I mean, that is how I would expect my leader. Budget or investments, if that's the most critical fact. The first question always is, have you changed it? Then you're not innovating. There is one thing which we cannot underestimate is your reputation.
Given the innovation part that we touched upon, and within your domain space itself, there's a whole lot changing. And I think in the world itself, with the AI coming in,
this booming AI will make it accessible to a lot more domains where it would have been much more high investment to get into that. You may not be replaced by AI, but you may be replaced by a person who knows how to use AI, right? So,
hello and welcome to the Leadership Sirius Show. Today our guest is Vivek. Vivek comes with over 3 decades of experience in the IT industry. He is specialized in data centers and server space. He has primarily dealt his early years in product solutioning and product testing, and his expertise lies in both software and hardware testing, and he's been doing this for several decades now. He is managing a large engineering organization, globally spread, and he works as a senior director in one of the top MNCs. He also has a critical role where he manages relationship across ODMs, and he is dealing with some of the top players in this space. Vivek is known for providing innovative solutions in the little things that he does. He also thrives on problems and pressure. He is known for embracing challenging situations, and that's what is something that we're going to deep dive into. What drives him today as a leader, as an individual? What are the expectations? How do one succeed when it comes to pressure situations and thriving when there are problems? We are going to have some interesting conversation around understanding what happens, what his thought process is, and how we could all embrace and win in those situations. Hello Vivek, welcome to the Leadership Sirius Show.
happy to be here.
Cool. So I think one of the things that I've observed in you is you kind of thrive, and at least from what I've seen, right, you kind of thrive in terms of on problems and pressure situations, right, and that's something that keeps you going. How is that happening? I mean, well, most of the people tend to either avoid problems or they kind of reduce the pressure, and these are two factors that are driving you, right? And I think what runs in your mind? I mean, how are you built? Can you talk a little bit about yourself?
Good. I mean, that's interesting. I mean, so when I look at it, right, I mean, initially from where I came from, I mean, a lot of it, I started my career in customer care, customer support. So been dealing with a lot of banking customers and things like that during their, that time, this is in 90s, right? So that is a time when, India was going through a huge banking, IT banking rollouts. So it's been part of a lot of those. So somewhere along the line, it has to be you have to keep a cool head when everything is burning around you, right? And initially, you can imagine when there was this kind of implementations are going on, things are not going well, and you are taking these banks and those customers rather, or the users who were used to writing on ledgers, which is like, once they write it, they are very happy about it, right? And to something which they don't really trust, right? And then you don't have systems which were as robust and reliable as now, right? I mean, so it will fail. So, and then you have everything blowing up around you. So, but you need to get it right. So you need to keep a level head there. I mean, you cannot get worked up or you cannot feel just tensed. So somewhere along the line, I mean, that became a habit, right? So I used to start liking solving problems. Basically, I like to solve problems. I mean, I like problems. I said, so that keeps me going. I mean, one way is I'm a very lazy person. So if there is no pressure, I relax. Somehow if there is nothing at work to which will keep me challenged, there are things to solve. I go into a kind of a back foot. So I started seeking out things which will keep me going. So that's how it came to.
So is this is from what I understand, is this is a skill that is kind of that you've developed over a period of time, right? As opposed to something you were built in that way, right? Is it there was a need of the hour from the early ages of your career, and then that's kind of led you to build the skill, and then over a period of time you started liking it.
Yeah, I would say, not very conscious building of the skill. I think a lot of people working in that would have developed that. But yeah, actually it is, maybe one thing is I didn't drop it at that time. I started liking it, right? So I because in any of those situations, one thing is it's a kind of a sense of achievement that you get once you cross that bridge. Right, you get into a high pressure situation. If you get into, get to solve that problem, and that is it's like a dopamine blow, right? So I started liking it. So instead of me, I know a lot of my friends or peers who would have said that, who has said that, this is not my cup of tea, and left and did a lot of other things, successful also. But yeah, I like that.
True, and I think I kind of agree to you, right? When you say really the dopamine part, or the joy that you get is multifold when you go through that curve of high pressure.
Correct.
Solving some major problems, and when you get over it, I think it gives you additional joy as opposed to you having a very steady state kind of a stuff, right? Understandable from a joy standpoint when you go through that curve, but really going through it multiple times and embracing that and really thriving over it becomes something that is not commonly sort of accepted and followed through. How important it is, do you think, in the current what we have, this VUCA world, of saying I need to deal with this pressure, this skill is something that is need to be developed, right? And I think there was a situation when you said you had to develop the skill as part of your early career itself. Not many would have realized that, and like you also said that there is some of them are more complacent, yet successful. I think there is success has a different equation altogether, but I guess given the current change, the disruptions are coming way faster than what it used to be. So given all of that thing, how important do you think the skill is, and what should one be doing to develop it?
I think that's a basic skill. The way I look at it, managing pressure is something which everyone needs to develop, right? And people do develop that. But amount of pressure, or the pressure, is something which people define differently, right? So you can have work pressure, you'll have pressure at home, you'll have so pressure is something which you'll always have. Will you thrive in that environment is something which you need to, you can continuously develop and see. Requires you to be able to be shutting off some things, right? Like, for example, I think I'm pretty good at keeping work and home very, very different, right? So even if it is something really, I would say something really burning at work, I can go home and get a good sleep, So usually not work pressures will not keep me awake at night. Unless I have calls at night, right? So otherwise, I have, that is something which I have learned to, made a conscious effort to get into that mode. So we have, at least between me and my wife, we had made an agreement long time back saying that we won't take work home, right? We won't discuss work, right, at home. So casual discussions maybe here and there, but other than that, once we get home, maybe whatever in the late evening or then it's only what is at home. So we don't look at what is there unless it is absolutely required to get into a call or something. Even if it's a call, once I drop it, I'm done. I'm not going to think about it. So that took me some time to kind of keep that separate. And once I got better at it, it was much easier to deal with any kind of pressures at work.
So I think what you're saying is it's not an important stuff, but it's a necessity, right? I think in the current world, I think you need to be able to deal with pressure effectively.
Correct.
And for you to sustain, right? And some of the things that you mentioned was really striking a balance, and really doing things diligently and stuff like that. Having said that, I think there's another interesting style of leadership that you have. I think there are several styles of leadership that people adapt and work on. I think one of the things that I've observed in you is you're very direct, right? When you look at it, I think your approach certainly makes it the situation looks simple, but at the same time there is a whole lot of baggage and challenge that comes across. And as every style of leadership,
correct,
there would be pros and cons in each of them, right? But not many kind of go the route of what you have chosen, right? Or what you operate on, which is being very direct in terms of communicating. It keeps it simple. So how has that worked for you, right? Or not worked for you? I'm sure it's worked for you to a large extent. That's how you're here. But can you throw more light into how is that style of leadership that you've picked up and how it has worked out for you?
Okay, so one thing which I would say in that is I try to take a path of leadership or style of leadership which I thought what I would like when it is given to me, right? I mean, that is how I would expect my leader to be, right? If my leader is giving me a message, I need it to be straight. I wanted to be sure that I don't misread the message. Like, so if it is a good message or the bad message, or it's a tough message, it should be direct. So you're saying that, for example, if somebody is telling me, Vivek, you didn't do the job well, I want them to be so very direct, so that there is nothing like, you have this style also, which is generally many of the management books will say, first start with, hey, Vivek, you've been doing this, you have worked so much on this, it's been really nice, this part of it was good, and you know what, this some area you can actually improve. I think a lot of times, if the manager was intending that, that was really badly done, I really think that many a times that message is lost in translation, because the person goes away from it thinking that, oh, I did a great job. Everybody has an improvement area, so this is my improvement. In some of the cases, they don't even understand it. But the way I would go is, if the improvement is bigger than the success in that, then I make that as a first thing to do. So I would say that, this is very clearly saying that, hey, this is not up to the mark, maybe. So this is one area you need to really focus on. There are other things which were done well, but this weighs more. So I make that very clear.
Okay.
So that there is no difference in translation, right? So, but the thing is, yes, as I said, it has a downside, which is it takes people some time, for everyone to see that, to develop that trust, right? Saying that, is this guy after me, or is it? So it takes a little while for people to say that it's not personal. It is only for looking at what needs to be done. So once that trust develops, it's much more easier.
Yeah, no, I kind of agree, right? When there is this initial investment that happens from the the receiver, right? Who needs to kind of keep faith in you and look at the trust element. I think that's also interesting that when you have a very stable environment, right? Unlike the way changes are happening today, it's very disruptive, very rapid, right? There's no time.
Correct.
And in that sense, these people need to adapt to these things really fast in terms of, okay, this is the style. I need to recognize your style and adapt. Not everyone does that. What is that you do to fast track that process? Do you think it's a whole lot in terms of investment from your side as well, or is it more of
two parts of that, right? So it does. One thing is, when people come into my team, I generally try to have that straight conversation. So one of the things I think I have always told anybody who has worked with me in a team is, hey, you know what? I try to be very direct, and I expect you to be also be direct. So I actually verbatim tell them saying that if I tell you something which you don't agree, you need to tell me this, I don't agree to this, and it sounds stupid. If you think it is stupid, you tell me if it sounds stupid, and I will respect you for that. So I tell that to most of the people.
I think the key from what I'm getting here is that you being upfront, transparent in telling you that this is the style that I operate in, and when you're operating with me, I expect a similar kind of transparency and straight, direct level of thing. So there is that agreement that happens at the initial phase itself. So that kind of offloads a little bit in terms of the transition time, right? Because they know that this is what, hey, this is what I was told, and this is how I need to be. Now, obviously, each one of us dealing with different management, there's a change management part of it which needs to go through. But the key is that there is a baseline that has been set and agreed by two parties, right? In this case, saying this is how we're going to operate. Now, you also deal with, there's multiple levels of expectations at your level, right? I mean, given where your roles are, you have a large global organization that you deal with, and you have multiple stakeholders, right? Be it the platform or hardware creators. There are also software development teams that are there. There's also the ODMs that you deal with, right, which are totally external from your current ecosystem. How does that work? I mean, given the similar style that you take, right? Because sometimes this can be intimidating as well to some of them, right? And it can be viewed in many different ways. A subordinate would view it very differently. A superior would, or rather your management chain would look at it slightly differently. And we are talking about external entities where we're dealing with certain managing relationships with them and getting a lot of work done. There is a lot of negotiation that happens in the process. And as part of that process of negotiation, there is this, we need to strike a balance, right? So how do you do that?
So it depends on the kind of or who I am dealing with, right? For example, if it is to vendor, it is different, right? I mean, yeah, I try to be direct, but obviously to what levels it matters, changes a little bit. And the other thing is, mainly, regardless of it is my superior or somebody is reporting to me or my vendor, it's a question of little bit of time where people realize it's actually at the end of the day it's people to people, right? People realize there is no ulterior motive. It's transparent. What I say is what I do, what I expect. Then people really, every kind of individual across cultures do adapt to that. People really look for that. Actually, every one of us looks for that. When I'm talking to you, I can really understand you, and there is nothing behind what I'm saying. And people can judge that pretty quickly. We underestimate people. Sorry. So yeah. So that's what it is. Mostly, it's that.
Sure, that this relationship has worked excellent for you, right? I think I think the human element that you brought adds another flavor to it, because I think as long as you're having this human connect. Right? That's the critical part, I guess.
Trust. Basically, it's trust, right? I mean, saying that, yeah, if both of the people are saying something and they are saying something which they can trust on, then that builds. Then you don't necessarily need to have your starting statement, ending statements, etc. You can communicate as closely as you can.
And I think that also saves and makes it more effective, right, in terms of what you do, because you're taking out the fluff. It's just direct to the point, and you know what I'm saying, I know what you're saying, so what we mean. So we are not caught up with this, that did you mean this versus that, right? And there's no misinterpretation happening. So I think it makes it a lot more effective, right? But also I think it's, like you said, I think it's another thing to be done in terms of trying to be transparent. And I think there is a little bit of an uncomfortable feeling probably for those who don't follow that style. But I think the change management or change over that is a lot more fruitful, right? And you save a lot more, or rather you kind of reap the investment over a period of time. That investment, early investment into building this human relationship is very, very critical.
Correct.
Let's pivot to your core domain, right? I think you have been in the testing, the solutioning and stuff like that. I think one of the areas that I want to look at is lot of things, from what I know of, is little things that you do. You focus on innovating. You look at how can I do things differently, not for the sake of doing it, but more so in terms of how can I make it more effective, right? And if you start augmenting what we spoke about on embracing problem, embracing pressure, looking at being transparent, and then the innovation part, I think it's a lethal combination. So how do you look at innovation? What does innovation mean to you?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, because this is something which we even at work we have a lot of conversations with. So we have this common thing that when people talk about innovation, they talk about how many patents and how many innovation disclosures and all that kind of thing. For me, innovation is always small, minute things. It can be the way I do things. It can be the process changes that we bring in. Obviously it is any patents that we write. But anything, if you change something for the good, that's innovation, right? If, for example, one thing which I try to get my team to think about is if I'm doing the same thing, if I'm doing one thing in a project and in the next project, if I'm doing the same thing the same way, then there is a problem, because we will get outdated. If you do that 2 times or 3 times, if these projects are a year projects, in 3 years you are doing the same thing. And then obviously there will be somebody else who will come and tell you that it can be done differently, right? So that's normal life, right? That's how we need to look at it. So we try to always look at, if I do something like this in now, is there a different way of doing it? And most interestingly, most of the innovations are not, unique ideas just out of the blue which is coming in. You just have to keep looking around. There are always, in a different domain, in a different place, there are things being done. Right? You just have to take learnings from somewhere, right? Maybe it may not be in your domain, may not be in the context that you want to apply, and then try to change that and apply it into your domain. It works. That's an innovation. It changes.
I think that's an interesting point that you made, right? I think there are different facets of innovation, right? And I think each pillar has got its own merit around it, and I think we need to apply appropriately to make sure that we are reaping those benefits, right? And I think innovation should be part of our DNA, not just at workplace, but I think in everything in life, I guess, right? I think we need to get innovative, and I think you also nicely touched upon this point of stagnation, right? You don't repeat the same thing, right? And you don't necessarily have to change things for the sake of changing it, but I think you need to look at it in terms of, okay, how can I improve that? Right, not just by doing differently, but more in terms of, I'm guessing that's what you meant, right, to do to make it better than the previous time that you had.
Make it better, spend less time on what we are doing, right? So that's at work it makes sense, right? Always. I have heard many people say that, particularly saying that, hey, I've been doing the same thing over and over again. I need to be put in something else. Can you give me this assignment, or so. The first question always is, have you changed it, right? Have you been doing the same thing which is you did in the last 3 years? Then you're not innovating. You be put in anywhere, you will not innovate. You will make it repetitive, mundane task. Sure. So that's the only, that keeps your job also interesting.
And I think that's a great point, right? In the current era of where disruption to disruption time is so small. I think we are in this whole digital agile world, right? where transformation is consistent, right? And I think you have to adapt quickly and kind of keep moving. And in that sense, being innovative is one aspect. And I think you kind of subtly mentioned another point in terms of how we kind of get into this thing of I'm getting bored because I'm doing the same thing, but we don't look at how can I do differently, right? The same thing. How can I make sure the results that I'm producing from that be amplified, right? As opposed to just doing things differently, but how can I amplify it? How can I make what is there with me much more exciting and efficient, so that that leads to more innovation, that leads to more jobs, and like you said, I think there is a domino effect of that, right, in a positive sense of how it could lead to your career itself, right? So I think that aspect is there.
Yeah, because like one thing which came to my mind at that time when you were saying that is there is one thing which you cannot underestimate is your reputation, right? Subtly, I mean, everyone knows, what, I mean, how to judge people, right? And we would say that don't judge, but what you do, what you don't do are known by people around you. So if you're good at doing things, you don't have to do that. Most of the people will notice that, right? So when you're starting your career, if you're trying to change what you're doing and you're making it more efficient, and you did something better than what your superiors expected, then your career will grow, right? Yeah. People notice you around you, not only your superiors, people around you notice that. So this is something which you need to keep, thinking in that, right? There is a reputation which people automatically make based on what you do, right? Sure. So that drives your career in a long way than what you actually think. A lot of people think.
Yeah. So given the innovation part that we touched upon, and within your domain space itself, there's a whole lot changing. And I think in the world itself, with the AI coming in, I think it's just changing every bit of it, right? And a lot of it is also not fully understood, and I think it is an evolving technology at this point in time. The adoption levels are not at the levels where we want to be because it's the early stages and stuff like that. How is that changing the world from your domain perspective, from specifically testing, and more so if you have to look at how is it impacting the hardware world, how is it impacting the software world from your perspective?
Multiple ways, right? If I take testing or validation as a domain and look at it again, like with all other domains, everyone is experimenting with it. Everybody is seeing the huge potential it has. Like all our, currently I wouldn't say is we have completely learned how to make the whole thing change with it, but we know the potential of it, and there are a lot of these projects that we are doing which kind of shows that a lot of things that we are doing now can be eliminated, right? And or I wouldn't say eliminated, can be done much more effectively, right? So we are still looking at it. There are not only looking at it, doing a lot of projects with it. But the thing is, I think we have not been using even about 1% of the potential it has. Everybody understands the potential it has. So, but there is a scrambling pace for trying to adopt, and hey, this can be done, that can be done. Yeah, let's do it and see, right? And there is also this small fear also which says that there is a little bit of fear in how much of confidential data can be there in some of these, right? So that's also being worked at. But yeah, this will change. This will completely change the way we do things.
I think the AI is at the early stages. I think there is a lot of regulatory stuff that needs to happen. And I think once there is more traceability and explainability of the whole stuff, I think then it just becomes a little more easy for people.
AI is something which will completely change the way we do things.
Do you have some kind of a timelines that you see, especially in your domain? Do you look at, more from a product standpoint, right, the output standpoint? Do you see things changing with respect to now with generative AI and other stuffs coming in, flavors of AI rather, right? And the volume or the data points, the synthetic data points are significantly increasing, right, than what it used to be. What kind of impact that is creating?
There are multiple aspects to that, right? One of the aspect, not directly because of using AI, but we are in the business of like hardware and servers. I mean, that has really taken off in a very different tangent, right? I mean, so basically enabling people to use AI, right? So those kind of hardware, etc., are and trying to match the pace at which the development is happening. That has really changed business completely. But that's not an AI creating it, but yeah, it is because of AI. This is because to use AI, you need these kind of highly powerful, highly power consuming, big machines for this. So yeah, somebody has to make it. So that is going on. But if you look at how it is getting implemented, we are finding it much more easier to handle data with AI than what we used to do before, right? So if you really look at it, there is a lot of data getting, we have been having from day one, right? A lot of, but the way we use the data is not that effective. We go search for that, find out, etc. But say if it is on real time, you can get information which is filtered around from, like 6 years of data. That changes the game completely.
Yeah, and I think with the current AI, I think we are more driven towards the algorithmic side of things, right? Where we are trying to focus on doing some incremental changes, and I think with human intervention and stuff like that. And then as we get into processing a lot more data points, right? Once we start leveraging the creative side of AI, right, and we are able to kind of get a consolidated viewpoint of that, then I think it gets a little more faster. And that sort of leads to my next question around this whole thing about autonomous testing, right? And as AI matures and as we start getting a lot more use cases, as we start seeing a lot more in terms of the traceability part, and we have clarity around how the models are being used, the logics are being used and stuff like that. What do you think about autonomous testing as such? I mean, do you see that the world will quickly move onto it? Still a long way. It's in nascent stage. What's your views on that?
I think it is not. It is in the nascent stage to an extent. Depends on the domain. I mean, depends on the environment and domains, right? I mean, autonomous testing is very effective in certain areas, and you need to do that. It's best to go in that direction in certain areas, but in certain areas, no. That's not very. May not be. Some of it requires a lot of investment. I mean, also, so investment plays investment and time defines how much testing you can do in anywhere, right? I mean, so it depends on like what is the kind of product quality you require, right? Like if you are into like, there is a very different level of quality from an enterprise and say aerospace. Right. So the requirements are different. The times are different. The timelines are different. The readiness to make investments are different. So based on that, yes. But depending on domain, autonomous testing will take off, and it's already taken off in many areas. It will continue to take off. But the changes, as you rightly pointed out, this booming AI will make it accessible to a lot more domains where it would have been much more high investments to get into that. Now this can make it more easily accessible to get there.
So the reach kind of spreads, right? For several more use cases, and then that's what gets adopted. So the role of budget you were talking about, Vivek. So how does that impact in any new technology adoption to all of that stuff, and what's the decision factor out there?
Yeah, so budget or investments, if you really look at it, that's the most critical factor when you look at least from a testing or a validation perspective, right? How much are you willing to invest on, and what level of quality you are expecting? So that's the decision making point for any test effort. If you really need fine quality, like if you are going into a almost zero defect kind of a situation, which I would say mostly aerospace, etc., then you need to make investments as in equipment and time and people, right? Time is something which you cannot forget, right? You cannot compress time beyond a particular level by throwing money at it. So that defines quality.
So having said that, let's say for either the current testers who are the early stages or even established, and as well as test aspirants who wants to get into testing and who find test as fascinating space to enter into, what would be based on your experience and what you've seen, what would be your recommendations, suggestions, how they should embrace it, how they should kind of prepare for it, how they should kind of transition into it? Some thoughts around it?
I think you need to keep up with the times, right? Be it even with AI or without AI. So as you get in, for the last maybe even almost a decade, right? There is a lot of focus towards automation, right? It was Earlier, maybe 10, 15 years back, the automation is in very niche areas somewhere. I mean, now without automation, there is no testing, right, to an extent. So you need to be good in coding, scripting, right? That's a given nowadays. But AI is, you better get to learn about AI, right? How can it be used? Start looking at it. There's this, I forgot who said, one of the famous people, I think it's Elon Musk or someone said, you know, you may not be replaced by AI, but you may be replaced by a person who knows how to use AI, right? So better understand it, learn the basics of it, you know, there are many ways by which, you know, you can use AI to your advantage now, you know. So try to get into that, try to get your understanding around it so that you can use when it has to be used. And you can always think in that direction, saying that, hey, how can I make it simple? If I adopt AI into that area, is there methods to simplify this, right? That will take you places.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point as well, right? While I was just thinking about this when you were saying, is that as a test aspirant, you want to kind of get into the new AI stream of looking at things and testing and stuff like that. For existing folks who've been in the system, you know, you better buck up, right? So you kind of really, you can't, if you are not adopting, I mean, if you're not learning, if you're not on the continuous learning path, then you're going to stay back, right? And there's going to be a lot of catch up that you need to do, right? And I think you had referred to, you know, if you can't, then you're obviously going to see an impact of that, right? So I think it just becomes a lot more important. So that's interesting. I think, you know, we've had discussions about some interesting topics, you know, interesting style of, you know, approaching, you know, the leadership style. We kind of looked at AI's role and how testing does, your unique way of dealing with problems in pressure situations, and the importance of you know, adapting to it and making sure that that's the need of the hour as well, right? So thank you so much, Vivek, for coming in.
Thank you. This was very interesting discussion. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.